Hey, Wayne Fox here with another video about Lightroom. As a landscape photographer, most of my imports are done while I'm in the field. When I get back to my room or back to my RV or wherever it might be, the first thing I usually want to do is try to get my files off my card onto my computer and another copy onto a secondary device, a hard drive usually attached to the computer. I usually want to get that done pretty quick. It's kind of a paranoid thing, I know, but the sooner the better. So I've got a few things that I've kind of developed over the years, some ideas and thoughts about that. And I thought I'd just share those in a quick video about what you might do when you are importing out on location. So let me tell you what I do. Okay, so as I mentioned, when I get back from a shoot, I'm a landscape photographer, so normally I'm getting back after a sunrise shoot. And I have a couple of main objectives. One is to get the images from my card onto my computer as quickly as possible, and also to get a secondary copy from the card onto a secondary storage device, which is usually another hard drive attached to my computer. I'm a little bit paranoid, so I look at a lot of redundancy. I'm not a real prolific shooter, so a lot of times I'm only shooting 70, 80, 90 images in a morning shoot. I typically look for one or maybe two compositions and spend some time just trying to get what I feel is a really perfect composition. And so I'll shoot quite a few images, but I'm really only looking for a few. I'm not real prolific, so it's a little easier for me because I'm not shooting, hundreds of shots. Anyway, that's kind of the goal. So I'm going to walk through what I typically do. I'll click the import button and I'll locate my images. That's pretty obvious. We're going to look here. We're going to find the card, and here it is. In this case, I have a couple of different cameras I've used for this card. I'm going to just bring the ones in from the Fuji. I will always glance through these and make sure there are not images that I really don't care about having. There's no reason to import an image that you're not going to use. So obviously these first four, actually these here, I'm going to go ahead and uncheck those. I'll look through and I'll see any that are obviously something I'm not interested in. At this point, everything looks pretty good. So let's go through the process. First of all, we're going to copy the images. I don't really believe in DNGs. I think maybe it was sort of a good idea, but Adobe needed to get the camera manufacturers behind them, and they really didn't. And I don't know that that's a real problem. Theoretically, DNGs will always be readable, but I've never had a digital file from a camera that I still can't read. We will start over here. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to build one-to-one previews. That's something if you want your import to be a little faster, because you actually don't need one-to-one previews. A lot of guys that shoot a lot of images, they're going to scan through them and they're going to delete half of them before they ever get started. So you'll want to set this to minimal instead of one-to-one. In my case, I'm going to want to zoom into one-to-one on all of them to check focus. And so I'm just going to go and have it do it, because what's going to happen as soon as I hit the import button, I'm in the field, I'm tired, but I'm more than anything, I'm hungry. So I'm going to go ahead and go eat as soon as I start this import. It might take 10 minutes. It might take 20 minutes. I really don't care, because once it's doing its thing, I don't need to stick around anymore. I do not use smart previews. I've not been a big fan of those. I think the concept's pretty good. I just have an issue that anytime you got something that small and you're trying to do some masking, I'm not sure how the process works. And I really don't need to, because I have plenty of storage now. I think smart previews are something that, Lightroom, the cloud version, might be helpful, but I don't really need it. I usually will turn this on. Don't import suspected duplicates. A lot of times I'll have the same card in the camera. So that afternoon I'll go shoot, and I've already imported a bunch of the images. I will actually take the card and I won't erase it. I will just continue to shoot on the card. So the goal is I will have basically 3 copies of every file. I'll have the original copy on the card. I'll have the copy on my internal hard drive, and then I'll have the copy on my external hard drive. And I won't erase the card till I get home from the trip, and I've actually backed those files up to my main hard drive sitting at home. So obviously don't import suspected duplicates is helpful, because most of the time a lot of the images on the card, especially on a 3 or 4 or 5 day shoot, most of the images are duplicates when I'm doing this, and I don't have to try to go figure out if they're duplicate or not. I always make a second copy when I'm doing this kind of a shoot. It's pretty easy to just go create a folder. I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to go call this card copies. and it will create a folder with a date on it when I do this. So I'm just going to choose that. So it's going to make that backup copy at the same time it's copying. Now I know there's a lot of people that say that they would rather copy the card from the Finder and then import them. But I've got about 3 things that I want to do at the same time, and I really don't see a reason I can't let the Lightroom do it. There's no magic to the Finder, the File Explorer. They're just applications that sit on top of the application layer, and they're sending the same basic instruction down through the kernel to the computer to make a copy. So the computer itself doesn't even know what program told it to make the copy. It's basically, bottom line, ends up a Unix file command. So there's no safety net in doing it in the Finder. And if you do that, then there's 2 or 3 other extra steps. And I don't think by the time you get everything done that you want to do, I think you end up spending the same amount of time. Instead of 1 step, you've got to do 3. I will always give them a custom name, and I have a pretty standard thing that I do. I always give it the year first, then I give it the day or the month, and then I give it the day. I use an underscore, and then I give it some description. And I'm just going to call this backyard because that's what I did. I ran in my backyard and just took a bunch of shots so I could do the video. If you look here at my custom name, it's the custom text that I just created in that field followed by a dash. And I usually will replace that with an underscore. And there we go. I like underscores better than dashes. And then I put in the file name number suffix. And you'll notice up above it's giving me an example of what that will be. So the file, when it's done, will have the day that I took the image. It will have a somewhat description of, so without actually looking at the image, I can have a clue where I took it. And it's got the original file number added to it so that it just gives it some uniqueness. You'll notice in this dialog box, I could actually automatically add the year, month, day that I typed in my custom description, but I'll show you in just a second why I don't do that. And that's my typical setting when I rename the files. Now I will always click on this and I will copy it. What I'm going to do is go down into subfolder, click that on. I'm going to put the same name as the folder name. So my folder name is always the same name as the beginning of all the files that are within the folder. And that's the reason I manually type in that date, because when I copy this, I don't want to make sure that they're identical. The reason that I put the date like that is because then everything is organized that way when I look at it outside of Lightroom as well as inside of Lightroom. I like that organization. I can go back through my hard drive. If we go back here and look, let's just switch over to the Finder and we'll find our Lightroom catalog. And if you look here, all the files have the same beginning as the folder, followed by the original file number. I usually don't apply a develop preset, but I usually do apply a metadata preset. And this is basically a copyright. If we go look at the edit presets, basically what I'm putting in is this here. So I'm going to put in copyright 2019 C. Wayne Fox. The copyright status is copyrighted. The usage terms is all rights reserved. That's what I usually do. And the URL is waynefox.com. Now, you can fill in some of this other information as well. Not a bad idea, but really that's all I'm interested in. So I want this tagged right away, so I'm going to save this as a 2019 preset. I'm not sure what happened to my other 2019 preset because that information wasn't there. So we'll make a new name for it and save it. So I'm going to apply that preset. I normally will apply some keywords as well. Now I have a fairly extensive keyword thing and it's not as organized as it should be, but I do make use of hierarchical, and I never can say that word right, keywords. So for example, if I put the keyword Death Valley, it's gonna add quite a few other things like Death Valley National Park, California, United States, things like that. So I will typically try to put in at least 1 or 2 keywords. Here I might put in flowers, leaves. You know, this isn't a real good example for keywords. Typically, if I'm at a pretty iconic location such as Mesa Arch, all I have to put in is Mesa Arch, and it's going to be able to automatically tag it into Canyonlands National Park, Moab area, and kind of a hierarchy there. As I mentioned, I always click the Into Subfolder button and I add the same name as the custom text that I came. Typically, I'm going to organize it into a single folder. The other option there obviously is to organize by date. I really don't need Lightroom to worry about that part for me. So the last step is just to tell Lightroom where you want the files to be put. Basically, your entire folder structure is over here, and you just navigate to the folder that you want the pictures to end up in. You'll notice that because I said to create and put them in a subfolder, there's a little folder icon with a plus and some metallic words. This is telling you where Lightroom will create this subfolder for you, and all you need to do is make sure that this little plus symbol folder is in the place you want it to be. And so what this is telling me is when I click the import button, Lightroom is going to create this folder for me first. It will then copy all my files and rename them at the same time into this folder. It will make another copy of the files with the original name into this secondary hard drive location that I've created. Now, sometimes it's useful to add these to a collection right from the beginning. This is a new thing, and that can be a useful thing. But pretty much that's all I do. Now, there are some import presets that you can create, something that you do frequently. This could be a change in your camera setting, things like that. I've got another video that talks about how to change your default camera settings. So if you're always having to do the same thing to every file you import, add some saturation or take some out, you can actually do that automatically real easy. So you can check out that other video. But at this point, I'm really done and I'm ready to import. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be headed to breakfast as soon as I hit the import button. So it'll take, 5-10 minutes for these files to copy. But, at this point, when it's done, it's going to be done and I don't have to do any other steps. So we're going to go ahead and hit the import button. Now you notice as soon as you do that, Lightroom will switch to the current import listed in your catalog, and it will start showing the images as they come in. This is not the folder that's being imported to. This is basically sort of a collection, I guess. And this collection is based on your current import. And once they start importing, you're free to start looking at them. You can double click on one if you want, and you can even zoom in one-to-one. Now it hasn't necessarily made all of the previews yet. Up in the top left, it tells you your progress. And it used to tell you what those two things were. Right now, it's giving you 2 operations in progress. One of those is copying the files, and the other, I assume, is making the one-to-one previews. So we'll let that run, and when it's finished, we'll wrap up the video. And now we're done. So what I have now, if I switch back over to my Finder, you'll see that I created this folder, and all those images are in there. They've been renamed, and because of that, every image is now identified with at least a small amount of information where it was taken. Of course, there's some keywords in there as well that help. If I go to look at my external drive, you'll see that if I go to the card copies that I just made, you'll see that it created a folder, and it tells me the day that I imported it, and all of the images are there. And it renamed them as well. It used to be it just left with the original file name on there. I didn't realize that. At least that's what I thought. I've never really had to use these images, so I've never looked at them. Now, obviously, as soon as I get home, I will back up my computer to my local storage, which is also very redundant, and I won't need to keep these anymore. So these will be deleted fairly quickly. But at this point, I have 3 copies of the files. The card stays in the camera case. And then, of course, the computer and the hard drive are in the computer bag. This means that I have 3 copies of the files in 2 different bags. And I guess my thought is if when I'm traveling, somebody steals one, at least I still don't lose all the files. Of course, I'm pretty protective of both of those, so I chalk this up more to paranoid than anything. So that's how I do a field import. You can see that even though it was 56 50 megapixel files from my Fuji, it only took a couple of minutes to do the import. Now, I know people just copy them to the Finder and then do all that. Well, if you copy them to the Finder, that's going to take a minute, minute and a half. It's not going to be super fast. And then you're going to have to go into Lightroom, and you're going to have to, at least to me, I would have to rename the files and add some keywords to all the files and stuff. And it's eventually the same thing happens, but I think overall it takes me more time. And as I said, if I just did 200 or 300 shots for a situation, especially when I'm shooting my IQ 4150, those are huge files, and that's going to take 3 or 4 times longer. And I want to go to breakfast, right? I just want to get this so that I know that they're safe, but I want to head out to breakfast. And so that's kind of why I've done it this way. Anyway, that's how I do a field import. I will, in the field, go into preliminary work on the images. I'll basically try to narrow down the ones I like, and then I'll mess with them. Now, I'm working on a laptop, there are no laptop screens that are awesome. I would prefer to wait to do the heavy lifting until I get back to my NEC monitors, which are wide gamut and very well calibrated. But I don't have a problem fiddling around with them and trying to kind of see which ones I like. And a lot of times I'll even do some stitching while I'm in the field just to see how it turns out. So anyway, that's kind of how I roll with the in the field importing. Well, I hope you found that video interesting and it gives you at least some thoughts on how you might want to handle your importing into Lightroom. The critical part is to make sure that you have plenty of redundancy so that you don't lose files or you have the ability to recover if something happens. I'm doing a video now on my total backup solution because it's really based on redundancy. I don't use RAID 5s or any of that kind of stuff. And I'll have that done pretty soon. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Make sure you click the subscribe button down below. And if you like the video, please click that like button so YouTube will actually give me a little credit once in a while. And until next time, thanks for watching. See ya.